Good evening. I call this special board workshop meeting to order at 5:02 p.m. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Ready? Begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Roll call. Let the record show that Director Snyder is absent. Moving on to item number 1, approval of the agenda. Are there any changes to the agenda?
No changes to the agenda.
I will move the agenda.
I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Moving on to item 2, public comment. There are no members of the public online or in person. So we will move on to item 3, presentation, annual financial plan and rate review. Mr. Bartz.
Thank you. Tonight, the finance department is going to be going over the budget, proposed budget for this year. And we also have Habib Isaac with us. And Habib has been working with the district since we were just talking since 2014, about 2014 when we did our first rate study. So he's very familiar with the district and he's here to answer any questions as we go through the budget. And with that, I'll turn it over to David.
Thank you, Don. We were going to actually have Habib present for us tonight to begin. Please.
Let's see. Yes? All right. Great. I guess still afternoon, right? Good afternoon, Board President, members of the board. So Habib Isaac with IB Consulting. As I mentioned, I've been working with the district quite a while when you guys first formed. Also provided the documentation of support for the standby charge they inherited from San Bernardino County because they had no information about it. But today we're going to talk about your annual update. So you already have rates scheduled for a number of years. So we do this for quite a few of our clients where they don't want to set just on autopilot and you want to see, hey, how are we doing with, usage changes quite a bit just based on weather. And are we outperforming what we projected? So essentially, you can kind of look at this as your annual report card to an extent. Go ahead. So we're going to go through what we updated in terms of the financial plan. We're going to review the financial plan outlook at the notice rates, and then what we recommend as your rates to implement for fiscal year 2027. Go ahead. I'll look right here. Oh, there it is. Okay, thank you. All right, so we updated the budgets based to actuals through fiscal year 2025. So we updated 24, 25, and then we incorporated the 2026 budget. And then we also captured new accounts and then also the usage of your customers between the two tiers. And you guys didn't implement the second round of ramp downs because I guess the Mojave didn't ramp it down. So then that tier 1 stayed at 11 units of water. And then we also updated your capital improvement plan. And that's one thing that always typically changes is your capital improvement plan from scheduling. A lot of times things don't get done in the prior year that gets carried forward. And then just turns and priorities or new things come up. That's something that we always have to make sure we update. Because capital is really probably the most intensive item of your budget. Next slide. So some of the key factors when it comes to looking at the updates. One thing is inflation. We use a 5-year average, and we monitor the indices of CPI as well as the engineer's news record. So we're using 4.2% for CPI, and then for capital, 3.9%. So when we look at future years, we're inflating the capital cost in those later years to make sure that we're keeping up with the cost of living. And then growth, we're not assuming any type of growth. You might have a few accounts here and there, but we really focus on capturing it every year, what has come online, as opposed to projecting what we expect to come online. For financial plan purposes, we don't want to assume certain number new connections come online, because then those connections have to come online to meet your revenue needs. So as new connections come in, then next year you can look at, oh, could we even reduce the rate or not go up to the fully noticed rate next time? And then in terms of water demand, with the usage, fiscal year 23, fiscal year 24, those years were fairly wet in terms of California as a whole. And then fiscal year 25, the usage was 2,300 acre feet. In our rate study, we're at 22. So a little bit more than what our rate study was. So that generated a little bit more revenue. But that will also want you to be careful on, setting rates not just for this upcoming year, for the following year. We have projections for fiscal year 28, but we do not recommend taking any action for 28 until this time next year, to make sure how things are trending and if usage changes. And supposedly we're supposed to get an El Nino next year, but I think we've heard that a couple times here and there through the years. And then with capital spending, for the next 5 years, we're looking at $20.3 million. We have debt proceeds of $6.8 million, and most of that's going to, or pretty much all of it's going to the Civic Center, and then also grants of $4.5 million. So we incorporate that in as well. That also frees up your rate revenue and your reserves that are available. And then we also monitor your reserves to see how you're looking, and that's probably the best way to check what is your financial outlook in the outer years, is how well and how healthy are your reserves. Next slide. Okay, so then here's your financial position, and this is just operating costs. So what this chart is showing you, that black trend line that's going up and then it levels out, that is your rate revenue, and then that slope increase is your notice rates of today at the fully noticed rate. Not for 26, of course, because you guys already made decisions on what to implement, but for 27 and 28, this is showing the fully noticed rates. And then from 29 on, you'll see that it stays flat because we don't have any increase of rates in those years, because you're going to set rates for 5 years. And then the dashed red line going across is your operating expenses. Again, I want to emphasize this is no capital. This is just your operating. And then the gray bars is the difference between your revenue expenses. So that's your net income that then could go towards capital spending and making sure your reserves maintain healthy balance. Go ahead. And then here's your capital. So obviously you have some heavy capital spending in the next 2 years. That's because of the Civic Center. And then we're showing the funding sources. So the gray is your grants, the light purple is your debt proceeds, and then the dark purple is what's being funded by rates and reserves. The Civic Center is expected to be completed in fiscal year 2027. And then as I showed you in those key assumptions, your debt proceeds of $6.8 million and the grant funds of $4.5 million are being used for that. And then the capital spending, fiscal year 28 through 30 is minimal. I want to point that out because in our rate study, we actually showed a little bit more in your capital spending, but again, things change and get adjusted. So then that's going to allow you to then have surplus funds that goes to your reserves and builds up your reserve balance. Next slide. So then here's what your reserves are looking like when we stay at the fully noticed rates. So it's increasing quite a bit. In 26, 27, you're within that bandwidth. That red line that's going across, that's a reflection of your minimum reserve requirements of your operating, your capital. And then the black dash line is your ideal target. Typically, we don't want to exceed that amount. We want to just be somewhere in between the two, the minimum and the target. But with this, you'll see that with the increase in usage and your rates at the fully noticed rates, as well as capital spending dropping down significantly after the Civic Center is completed, that's what causes those jumps in your fund balance in 28, 29, and 30. So then what this tells us is we have opportunities once again. Last year, you didn't go to fully noticed rates. And now this year, it looks like we won't have to go to fully noticed rates, which is a great thing to convey to your customers, that you don't just put on autopilot. You do look at this, you do review it. And I also want to give credit to your staff for coordinating with us to update this information. Next slide. So then our recommended rates, go ahead. would be ratcheting that down, so then we're within that bandwidth. But we don't want to take it down too far, because again, you still have 5 years or 2 more years of rates. So what we're recommending is for fiscal year 27 to have a reduction of 14% less than what was noticed. And then that's roughly, in terms of looking at what your rates are today and what the increase is around 3 to 4% only, as opposed to, I think we were expecting before a 16% increase, or 14 to 16%. And then for 2028, even though we're not making decisions on 28, right now we have it at just a 3% increase instead of 16. So it looks like most likely you're going to also be able to reduce the next year's rate as well. So then collectively over the years, I think your effective tax rate was single digit as opposed to double digits that we had to notice. Go ahead. So then our recommended rates for 2027, next slide. I wanted to show this compared to the notice rates for 27. So what was on the books that was sent to your customers when we did the rate study is in the middle column it says fiscal year 27 notice rates, and then our recommended rates of what to implement for this upcoming year, and then you'll see the difference. So there's definitely quite a bit of savings that you'll see here. And then I also want to show you the next slide, which is compared to today's rates. And then here you'll see a little bit different depending on what meter size you have, and then obviously with the tiers, and it shows roughly 3% to 10% in tier 2, but in aggregate it's around a 4%. If you take all those rates and all the revenue that's going to be generated, if we look at 27 revenue projections versus 26, it's around a 4% increase in aggregate. One thing that I wanted to point out too, which is interesting, is that the recommended rates of 2027 is actually slightly less than the notice rates for 2026. So that's an interesting little nugget to tell your customers. So that's our recommendations for this study, or I guess for this annual update. And if you have any questions, I'm more than happy to answer them for you. I think that was my last slide as well. Yes.
So quick question, so I don't have my notes in front of me.
Yes.
For July of 26, we were taking tier 1 down to 9.
In 26 though, you didn't. We were expected that you were going to have to, but
Right.
then you didn't need to, and it stayed at 11 units. But for this upcoming fiscal year, it is going to go down to 9.
So July, right?
Yes,
July
July
of
1st.
this year will go to 9. And
Yes.
so this 2027 is with tier 1 staying at 9.
Tier 1 will be at 9.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, and the reason for that is we're ramped down with Mojave
Right.
this year. And so we were able to avoid that last year, but our rates were based on the kind of the ramp down with the adjudication. So it goes down to 9 from 11.
Okay. Any other questions? No? All right. Yeah, right. Thank you very much.
All right. Thanks so much. And it's nice seeing everybody.
You
Thank
too.
you.
Thank you.
All right, so we will move on to item 4, review of 26-27 draft budget.
David is going to present this.
Thank you, Don. Good evening, board members, and thank you to Habib. That was excellent presentation. Great breakdown of everything we're going over. So if we start, we're looking at, as Habib mentioned, 4% increase to rates this year, and then with the adjustment in tiers going down to 9, it's an overall, it's looking like a 6% increase to rates. Our water revenues on line 12 are coming in very close to budget numbers for prior year. So this year, we're budgeting $5,260,000, which is an increase of $297,000. And then for the water meter charges, it's a 4% increase. to bring our line 21, our total water sales, up to $10,187,000, an increase of $487,000. Our special assessments, line 23, that amount is just showing a slightly decrease as we do every year as more and more meters come online. So we're seeing $285,000 in budgeted revenue this coming year. The park and recreation fee in government is minimal. In other services, line 31, the budgeted number of 345,000 is, we're budgeting similar to what we received this year, as that amount is just slightly over the budgeted numbers for last year. So for gross income, our year-to-date numbers is $10,344,000, and we are budgeting this coming year $10,833,000, an increase of $489,000. Does the board have any questions on the income section so far?
Good.
We good with that? Nice. Moving down to the water purchases on line 40. We're not showing any purchased water necessary in this year or the coming year. We'd like to point out that the water rights that were purchased in 2012 and 2015 are bringing in a savings of $1,135,000 this year, which equates to almost 12% savings in rates. We move down to the salaries section. The salary section, the amounts we are showing for year to date is slightly lower than budgeted numbers due to staff being less than full at this time. So there is some money saved this year, but this coming year we are budgeting for a full staff and a COLA increase of 3%, in which for our area as of March, the COLA was 3.1%. So we're using 3 for this coming year. In this year, line 47 for overtime, that amount is slightly up due to the winter storm. So we should see, we're budgeting a reduction of that down to $211,000 for this coming year. The line 51 for retirement costs. In the prior 2 years, we have budgeted and paid UAL payments to CalPERS, and we are not budgeting for that in this coming year, as there was great returns last year, so we should be close to fully funded with CalPERS. So the total salaries and benefits line, we are budgeting $4,580,000. Do we have any questions on that section?
Nope.
Oh, lovely. Moving on to the next page for the board compensation. The board compensation year-to-date numbers are coming in really close to budget. For the upcoming year though, for lines 55, 56, 57, for the auto expense, meals, lodging, education, and training for the board, we chose to budget the full amounts for those categories. So the total amount of those 3 lines is $37,500. It's an increase, but just want to allow for that training. The board's okay with that. Moving now to the professional fees section. The one that stands out is line 64 for outside services. We're budgeting $340,000. There was an increase this year as we had we're building out a GIS dashboard in this coming year. Oh, in this current year too as well, we have a hydraulic model update. In 26, 27, we are budgeted for some temporary labor in the office for a few months. So there's some increases there. But overall, it's a $54,000 increase to professional fees. Moving on to service and supplies. As I mentioned before, a lot of these numbers are coming in, the year-to-date numbers are really close to budget, and we're budgeting similar numbers. Till you get down to line 77. For insurance, the insurance, I guess the notice they're giving us right now is about a 10% increase. The good news is we did not spend as much was noticed for this year, so there was a $20,000 savings there. So we're budgeting pretty much what we budgeted for this year again, as they're telling us they're going to increase the rates by about 10%. There's a slight increase in fuel costs. As we've seen, fuel costs go up 25% or so just over the past couple months. So we have included that in our year-to-date numbers and the budgeted numbers for next year. The numbers for this year are lower than budget due to, I guess the fuel cost stayed pretty much the same up until, 2 months ago. Let's see. Moving down to line 84, repair and maintenance costs. Repair and maintenance costs are up due to the winter storm damage that we did some repairs this year and continue to repair. And we'll repair going into next year. So there's probably an additional $400,000 needed for next year. We have increased costs for well and booster repairs as well. So our total repair and maintenance line, we are now budgeting $1.3 million. I think that's the last major one that stands out in that category. So overall, it's an increase in repair and maintenance of $262,000. Do we have any questions on those sections or comments?
So on the winter repairs that we need to do, it stays in the budget or is it part of the capital plan?
That is part of just stays in the expense budget. We're just replacing those lines. It's just simple repairs, not huge major capital projects.
Okay.
Did everybody receive the email that came through on the OES and the county? The county did not receive any funding for the storms. The state rejected everything. But you should have each received an email for that. If you did not receive it, let me know, and I'll make sure you get it.
I just remember hearing, yeah.
Our next section we're going to cover is our utilities section. So total utilities for line 103, we're budgeting $1.7 million, which is just $47,000 less than current year. What that is due to is the solar credits, we're receiving less this year as some of the inverters are hitting their life and we're having to replace them. We've had the system a little over 10 years. So we're replacing inverters and hopefully it will be fully up and running next year and we can get back to that full amount of getting $400,000 or more towards utility costs. Edison they did notice us about a 5% increase in rates this coming year. So hopefully that solar credits will offset that. On the next page, we jump down to line 107 for depreciation. We're showing an increase in depreciation in enterprise and government. Enterprise is going to reflect the Civic Center, and then we have also the parks projects going on. Should be completed in this next year. So we're going to see an increase of $45,000 to depreciation. which brings our line 111, our net operational income. For this current year, 25-26, we're looking at an income of $662,000, and we're budgeting $441,000. This is on a positive note, as this is this will be the second year that enterprise will be operating in a positive operational net income. Moving down to the property tax section, line 128. Property taxes are seeing a 5.5% increase for a total amount of $2,150,000. And that is all going into the government section. That increase is due to just annual increase, the small increase plus reassessed values of property. Right there. The solid waste franchise fees, we are budgeting a 3% increase, so that'll bring our revenue for that to $433,000 for this coming year. Meter installs and connection fees. For this year, the revenues are coming in $240,000 more than budgeted. So we've averaged 65 meters or so over the last 3 years, and we're budgeting slightly under 50 to stay conservative, and that's why you see that number stay down around $702,000 for the new meter install revenue. Any questions on those couple sections we went through, or comments? Good? Thank you. Moving on to line 142 for interest income. Interest income for district-wide is coming in at $1,474,000, slightly more than budgeted due to just a delay in a little bit capital spending. So we will see that fall off in this coming year. You're going to see a reduction in enterprise of $290,000, but still we're coming in at $592,000 for enterprise interest income, $528,000 in government, for a total interest income of $1,121,000. And we're receiving about 3.7% on all the funds, so we're still at a pretty good interest rate on all those. Again, the decrease is just due to decreased rates, increased capital spending over the next year. We continue to receive lease revenue, line 147, I believe, for $138,000. This lease revenue is currently being used to help repay some loans from reserves, which I'll mention here in a second as well. I guess if we go to the last page. We see our net income for enterprise coming in at $1,575,000, and government is $2,167,000 for a total net income of $3,743,000. The repayment of the reserves I just mentioned, lines 167 and 168. In 25-26, the 2015 loan for the water rights will be fully reimbursed. So that's why we're seeing a reduction of $300,000 in that line. So it's down. We're only going to be transferring the $238,000 from enterprise. The $69,000 on lines 167 and 68. That is the lease revenue. That is going to help repay the reserves. So with those repayments in 26 and 27, that will fully reimburse the reserves from the loans. So this will be the last year for those. So if we move to line 171, so we have our capital project spending in enterprise of $1,437,000. That is $400,000 of enterprise's contribution to the Civic Center EOC, and then what are some other capital projects there? The $5,414,000 you're seeing in the government, that is their portion of the EOC building. So if we look at line 173 for enterprise, we have a positive cash flow of $306,000, which goes towards helping build up the reserves for future capital projects. For government, it's a negative $3,274,000. I think that's all I wanted to cover. Do you guys have any other questions or comments?
Sorry. So that big negative number, the 3 million,
Yes.
that comes out of reserves? I mean, it's got to come from somewhere.
Well, government has a large operating cash balance or reserve balance. They are, at the end of this year, we'll be sitting around 15 million.
Okay,
So it'll come from
it'll cover
that
it.
money that we've saved up over years, not spending, saving up for these kind of capital projects.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
As always, great job. We appreciate you taking the time to do all this for us. All right. What's that?
Oh, is that a new thing?
Yeah,
No.
yeah. Next item.
Sorry, I didn't get hit.
It's okay. Let's see, where are we? So item number 5 is 10-year capital improvement plans.
Yes, if you'd like, we can go over the 10-year capital improvement plan. I believe all of the board members have reviewed this, and this reflects what was discussed in the prior meetings. If you'd like, we can go over it, but I don't believe there's any changes to that from what we had discussed in the past. And on sheet, I think it's 23, small number, 8.5 by 11, shows you the funding sources for the different projects. And so we have the chromium 6 mitigation, the Civic Center, although I would like to take that future Civic Center note off and make it the Civic Center at some point. Maybe by next year we can change that to, that'll drop off the list there. So if there's any questions on that, we'd be happy to answer any questions you have.
No? Good? Okay.
Oh, I guess I have a question.
Yeah.
I'm gonna probably step in
Yes.
something. So on the winter storm, we got denied reimbursement. So all of that just stays in that budget. There's no like plan for that for,
Yeah,
I'm
so
kind of
the-
asking the same
yeah.
question again, but I just want to make sure.
No, so and David can back me up on some of this too if I'm not familiar with some of it. But the ask that we put in was $2.7 million. And that was to fix it how we would love to see it fixed.
Right.
Actually, all of the funding was denied, even the funding we put out for the staff time that we had out during the storm and the repairs that we're actually doing. Now, the repairs that we're doing are probably gonna be about $250,000. Does that ballpark, Chris?
Yeah, that would be a good number.
Yeah, so that is what we will be having to put out to fix our system back to where it should be. It's not what we had hoped it could be, but it's definitely going to be in a lot better shape. We're somewhere in between for a lot less by doing the work in-house.
Okay, and then we're still planning on going deep and
Yes.
reinforce all that?
Yeah, I
Okay.
believe they have two. Chris, if you want to go ahead and talk about the projects that you have going with that.
We're doing 5 crossing the wash, Sheep Creek Wash. We have 2 of them complete. We are looking at a 3rd one. We are going deep at the bottom face of the wash. We're about 8 foot deep. So 3 to 4, 3 feet deeper than the existing line.
Okay,
The 45s got washed out on every crossing where they come up, 45 up to the existing road, so those are being pushed east and west of the wash, so hopefully we never see them again. So the wash crossings are going deeper. The other repairs, we will have to relook at how we're going to make those repairs due to the funding being denied.
Yeah, the crossings, what they did, they put accessible valves on each side of the wash with hydrants. So if something happened where it did get washed out, they have an easy shutdown to save that line or what they can of that line. So it's kind of planning ahead for a future disaster, but I think we're gonna be good. We have lines that are that deep and did not get affected by the storm. So we should be in a lot better shape.
Thank you.
I just want to say thanks to staff for taking that project on. That saved a lot of money.
Yeah, it's a big project. They had a dozer out there and they had to clear 40 feet, 50 feet wide?
Yeah, some of these were doing 40, 50 feet wide to bench because of how deep we are. So some of these areas are 20 foot deep, but we're going at least 40 to 50, maybe more wide at the top to make it safe. That excavator we're using is rather large with a 5-foot bucket. So the trench we're working in is 5 foot wide with 8-inch pipe. So it's pretty safe out there.
Nice. All right, thank you. So no one has any questions on the CIP or needs to go over it or anything? We're good? Good, okay. Just want to make sure. All right, so then we will move on to item 6, review of action items. Were there any current meeting action items?
I have noted none.
Okay, so with no further business before the board, we will adjourn at 5:39 PM. Thank you.